Hey there, this is Jonah. I'm here for the Christian Leadership Application Project. This is my video for that. And my project will be on discipline in Christian leadership. So that's going to be my focus is discipline, and I have two focuses. One on maintaining self-discipline as a Christian leader, the importance on self-discipline in Christian leadership, and also cultivating a culture of discipline as a Christian leader. So, discipline. Why does it matter? Well, J. Oswald Sanders says in his book, Spiritual Leadership, Principles of Excellence for Every Believer, on page 61 precisely, he states that without this essential quality of discipline, all other gifts or essential leadership qualities remain as dwarfs. They cannot grow. So Sanders suggests that the leadership quality of discipline is essentially the doorway to unlocking and attaining all other attributes of a well-rounded Christian leader. He goes on to say that before we can conquer the world, we must first conquer the self. That's on page 61. We see this somewhat emulated in the writings of Paul, where the apostle states in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 27, he says, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly, I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified." So we see that Paul emphasizes self-control, exercising self-control in all things, not running aimlessly, but having a goal, and maintaining discipline in his self-discipline in his body and keeping it under control. And so in this, Paul shows that everything we do must be with intentional purpose and merciless determination to do anything necessary to achieve the desired goal. Sanders describes this kind of leader when he says, "The young man of leadership caliber will work while others waste time, study while others snooze, pray while others daydream. Slothful habits are overcome, whether in thought, deed, or dress. The emerging leader eats right, stands tall, and prepares himself to wage spiritual warfare." Now, there are many ways in which a lack of personal discipline can negatively affect one's leadership. In her book, Divine Discipline, How to Develop and Maintain Self-Control, Rhonda Harrington Kelly states, "Personal development is limited when people lack self-control. Some never graduate from high school nor achieve educational goals. Others never find fulfilling work nor accomplish professional goals. Some never build healthy personal relationships, and others develop abusive behaviors when they cannot control their excessiveness." That's found on page 3 of her text. And in contrast to this, that's someone who can't maintain self-control or self-discipline, but in contrast to this, however, Sanders states in his text that discipline in early life, which is ready to make sacrifices in order to gain adequate preparation for life tasks, paves the way for high achievement. Now, in chapter 10 of his book, Spiritual Leadership, Principles of Excellence for Every Believer, J. Oswald Sanders focuses heavily on the importance of being a spirit-led Christian leader. He states that spiritual leadership requires spirit-filled people. Other qualities are important, but to be spirit-filled is indispensable. So he places spiritual leadership and spirit-filled leadership, being led by the Spirit, as a Christian leader of utmost priority. From building a team to building a strategy, the leading of the Holy Spirit is essential to one's leadership in the Christian economy. This may be one of the reasons Paul emphasized spiritual training in his letter to his protege, Timothy, in 1 Timothy 4, verses 7 through 8. Have nothing to do, this is Paul speaking, have nothing to do with irreverent, silly myths. Rather, train yourself for godliness. For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and for the life to come. Being trained or disciplined in godliness should be of utmost importance to the Christian leader. Rhonda Kelly shows the relation between discipline and spiritual leadership when she states, "The undisciplined Christian, no matter how sincere, cannot live a spirit-filled life. Self-discipline is necessary for spiritual growth and abundant life." So if self-discipline is necessary for a spirit-filled life or spirit-filled leadership, and spirit-filled leadership is of utmost importance as a Christian leader, then logically, self-discipline is even more of utmost importance in the Christian leader's life and prioritization in their leadership. Some Christians, even Christian leaders, shy away from discipline for the fear of practicing or being perceived as practicing some form of legalism. I've personally experienced this in my own life. These Christian leaders may hold an exaggerated emphasis on love and kindness rather than maintaining and enforcing discipline. Kelly would disagree, for in her book she states, "Contrary to popular belief, abundant love does not make discipline unnecessary. Instead, it is because of deep love and concern that parents discipline their children and teach them self-discipline. Discipline of self is not caught, it is taught. While some people," this is still Kelly, excuse me, "while some people seem naturally to have more willpower, all of us must develop self-discipline in order to lead more productive, happy, fulfilling lives." End quote. We also see this in Oswald's text when he states, "A leader is a person who has learned to obey a discipline imposed from without and has then taken on a more rigorous discipline from within." So a leader is someone who's had discipline imposed on them and has learned to cultivate discipline within themselves. Self-discipline, excuse me. Oh, praise Jesus. Excuse me. Now, moving on to a culture of discipline. So from self-discipline to cultivating a culture of discipline. Why is it important to cultivate a culture of discipline? Well, Sanders gives an answer of, he states, "Many who drop out of ministry are sufficiently gifted but have large areas of life floating free from the Holy Spirit's control. Lazy and disorganized people never rise to true leadership." So this is someone who is undisciplined, unorganized, lazy. They may be sufficiently gifted, but if they aren't under control via Holy Spirit, via self-control and discipline, they're not going to get to the desired destination that the Lord has for them in ministry, in life. So cultivating a culture of discipline is important because we can have a ministry full of people who are gifted, but if they're not disciplined, then they're not going to reach the intended goal that the Lord has for them. And so this goes into prompt 2 of this application project. How can I apply this to my current environment? Well, Sanders says in his text, Spiritual Leadership, quote, "If a leader shows strong discipline, others will see it and cooperate with the expectations placed on them. At this point, leadership by example is crucial," end quote. That's from page 64. And so we see in this that the emphasis first should be on the leader and their personal self-discipline and pursuing self-discipline in their own lives and them being the example for the rest of their team. So me personally, that means that I must first grow in my own self-discipline if I want to create a culture of discipline. I must be the one to grow in my discipline in time management, in my discipline in fitness, my discipline in nutrition or spiritual disciplines, reading the Bible, prayer, you name it. My workload in correctly prioritizing and maintaining the responsibility of my workload in the ministry, my school load, or assignments and due dates in my school. I first must grow in my own self-discipline in these areas. And then branching off into Jim Collins' text, Good to Great, and his idea of the hedgehog concept, I think another big step, in building a culture of discipline is to build a hedgehog concept and maintain the discipline to stick to it in my personal leadership. Meaning all ideas, strategies, and goals that do not line up with or benefit our specific hedgehog concept, I must show great rigidity and mercilessly burn all such options. So in my personal ministry and being in youth ministry, as a leader, whatever you want to say, just in my personal atmosphere of influence, that might mean I'm going to get to that later, I'm sorry. But going further, Jim Collins says in his Good to Great text in page 134, he says, the good to great companies at their best followed a simple mantra. Anything that does not fit with our hedgehog concept, we will not do. We will not launch unrelated businesses. We will not make unrelated acquisitions. We will not do unrelated joint ventures. If it doesn't fit, we don't do it, period. And that's the same mentality that we should carry as leaders in our ministry. In my ministry, that sounds so weird, of student ministry. So in my personal atmosphere, that may mean gathering our student ministry team and conceptualizing a hedgehog concept for the direction of our student ministry. Something that we can stick to. This is our crystalline, this is our clear, our simple strategy and our goal, and we're not going to veer off from it at all and implement discipline in that way. But before any of this would start, however, I would need to ensure that I have the right people, or we have the right people on the bus. In order for us to create a culture of discipline, I would need to make sure that the people on our team have a growing and sustained sense of self-discipline themselves. For without this, a culture of discipline would never feasibly be cultivated. And herein lies the potential challenge. Realistically, I couldn't just throw out all the people with no discipline from a volunteer student ministry. So, I would need to be more tactical and gentle in my approach. Maybe the route of inspiration would be more effective, living a disciplined life for myself and living out the fruit of such life. Then I could gather the team together, explain to them the benefits in self-discipline for not only themselves, but for the ministry as a whole. And then we could all make a plan of how we could implement discipline and accountability with each other for our different goals. I believe this would also greatly increase the familial atmosphere of our team as we all strive towards achieving increased daily discipline. I think that this would be one of the best ways to cultivate a culture of discipline. Jim Collins says in his text on pages 135, 136, he says the more an organization has the discipline to stay within its three circles being its hedgehog concept, the more it will have attractive opportunities for growth. And veering off outside of those three circles, veering off outside of the hedgehog concept, not having discipline to stay within those lines, you're going to compromise potential growth. And so I personally believe that as we increase in our own personal disciplines and stay disciplined in our alignment with our ministry's hedgehog concept, we will be on the one-way express to success. And so that is my project, my Christian leadership application project on discipline in Christian leadership. I hope this was sufficient, and I thoroughly enjoyed this project. But here it is. Thank you for listening. God bless.